Good morning.
Good morning.
We can do better than that. That's okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. There you go. All right. I like that. I like being more robust, like we're not asleep. We are in John chapter 2. Today we're going to be in verses 1 through 11. It's good to be back in the pulpit. I mean, but I'll tell you what, it's a much needed break. It really was. I text Greg and say, hey, man, can I just have a Sunday off in August? Things are kind of getting caught up a little bit. He's like, yeah. And then he texts me back a few minutes later and said, don't worry about preaching in August at all. I've got it taken care of. And so I appreciate that. It was like a weight that was lifted off my shoulders. I've come to realize over the last 4 weeks, I got some big shoes to fill up here. There were some very good sermons preached. I mean, very, very touching. I mean, I enjoyed every single one of them. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I can even come close to what those guys did. We are in chapter 2 here in John. We're going to start that journey back into John. And we only have 20 more chapters left. I know we're going to zip right through them and get to the end of it really quickly. I don't know if anybody believes me, but I'll do my best. But anyway, if you will, please stand as I talk about this miracle in Cana. John chapter 2, starting in verse 1, it says, on the third day there was a wedding in the Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, have no wine, we have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does that have to do with us? My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, whatever he says to you, do it. And there were 6 stone water pots set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons each. And Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water. So they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, draw some out now and take it to the head waiter. So they took it to him. And when the head waiter tasted the wine, and the head waiter tasted the water which had become wine, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew. And the head waiter called to the bridegroom. And he said to him, every man serves the good wine first, and when the people have drunk freely, then the servers the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. This beginning of his signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Please pray. Lord Heavenly Father, I just come to you right now, knowing that I need your help. I need your strength. I know I cannot do this on my own. It's only through your power that I'm able to do any of this. Lord, I pray that I can get out of your way. I pray that your words are spoken here today, and that God somehow through me that we can just paint a picture of your Son and what he means for each and every one of us. Lord, just once again, I just turn it over to you. Jesus Christ's name, I pray. You may be seated. I entitled this, What to Do When the Wine Runs Out. You know, I think about that title, and I think about this sermon, and it kind of really hit home even before, like I had it done before I got COVID. So I've had it sitting there for a while, and I really didn't realize when I was doing the sermon that it was kind of about my situation of just being a little bit overwhelmed. You know, what do we do when things don't work out in our lives? I mean, think about that. I mean, you know, I believe that most of us aren't very good time stewards, and we don't manage our time very well. And I think that we get busy in and out of church, and the candle gets start burning on both ends. And we can't handle the things of the church, of God's kingdom sometimes, and we get to where we can't even function, and then something big comes along, and it just shuts us down because we can't handle it. What happens when the wine runs out in our life? What happens when we get to that point where we are just overwhelmed? I think this text paints a mirror-like metaphor of the world we live in. I think it parallels the current situation that many of us find ourselves in each and every day. And I think that we're going to come to the conclusion that Jesus is the answer. That he's the one that we turn to for our everyday problems. And I think that when we first read this scripture, I mean, I know we've all read this scripture. We all know the story of Jesus turning water to wine. And we're very, very easy to say, well, what a cool story. What a cool miracle that was. You know, Jesus turned wine from water. But if you dig into it and you really look beyond the story, we see some great things that's in this little story here. And there's really two important things that come out of the story. First is that Jesus says, my time has not yet come. And we look at that when he said that my time has not yet. And then the second one, that his glory was revealed. That's important that in this just little story we see those two things. You know, in John's gospel, Jesus' time refers to his time of his glorification. When he would receive his true place and position as the Son of God, it would include his death and resurrection. That's when his glorification would come about. You know, and we see that Jesus' words emphasize his purpose while he's here. And it is portrayed through this miracle of how his glory was revealed. That people start realizing that he is the Son of God. Man, what a tremendous act of power it was of just turning that water into wine. This small display of divine nature, it was enough to convince the disciples of his identity and initiate their trust. This is the first miracle recorded in the Gospels. And in the Gospels, there's 35 other miracles recorded. So this is the first of the 35. And this miracle is only in John. It's not in any of the other ones. And I believe that the reason why is that John wants to show the deity of Christ, of who he is, that he is God reincarnated here on this earth in the flesh, and that he has that power. And, you know, and so John is really showing this as being who Jesus is, and how the power is being displayed through Christ. But I also think that when I look at this, I think it gives us a way of showing that how Christ meets our everyday needs. So we're going to dig into the scripture here. We're going to look at a little bit what John is saying in verses 1 through 5. It says, on the third day, there was a wedding in the Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there, and both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does that have to do with us? My hour has not yet come. And his mother said to the servants, whatever he says to you, do it. There's a lot in these 5 verses. You know, a wedding celebration back in these days, back in the biblical days, they could last up to a week. You know, it wasn't just a little 3 or 4 hour thing you went to, but it was a celebration, and it lasted a whole week. And it took place in Canaan, which was a small town. It was about 9 miles north of Nazareth, and so we see that that's where it was. And Jesus being a Nazarene, you know, he probably knew the bride and groom, and he was invited to the wedding. He made it, you know, a point to being there in the wedding. Canaan is only mentioned in John's Gospel twice, and both times there's a miracle involved. This one here, and the second one will be in chapter 4 when he heals the nobleman's son. So we see that's that, but and we know that Mary here is probably on the planning committee, if not the wedding planner, because when they ran out of wine, they went to Mary, right? They went to Mary and said, "Hey, we're out of wine." That is such a disgrace. That is a social embarrassment. They ran out of wine at the wedding celebration. That was a no-no. That was the one thing that they could not do. And so we see that as the whole town was there, because the whole town was invited, you know, and everybody was there. And so it would have been an embarrassment. Well, I want us to look at Jesus for a second. That Jesus went to this wedding. You know, Jesus' mission on that's his mission. That's what he's here to do. He took time to go to a wedding. I want us to see that his life, that what he's done is it's excludes any joyous time. His life has some joy to it. You know, he went to a wedding. He was celebrating this wedding, and he took time out of his ministry to do that. I think that sometimes we have to understand that too. That yes, we're all ministers, and yes, we're all in the kingdom, but we have to sometimes balance our ministry and our life together. You know, that Jesus always took time to pour his life into somebody else. And I believe that that's what we need to do too. Just having friends here always. I mean, we need to have other friends where we can pour our life into them and talk with them and enjoy it. It's okay to go hang out with other friends who are Christians. It's okay to go out and do these types of things. We have to take those time to do that. But what a profound statement he made against a joyless spirituality. Being in ministry, being a Christian, is not a burden. It is not a burden to be a Christian. Let me tell you what, being a Christian means we need to have a little joy. It should be a joy that we get to come to church on a Sunday morning, not a burden. It should be a joy to go help somebody who needs some help, not a burden. It should be a joy to come in and sing songs, not a burden. It should be a joy to do anything for his kingdom. Being a Christian is not a burden. It is a joy. 100%. And I know that we can all get burnt out from time to time with things, but man, if we put our mindset that we think that it's a joy to do God's work, then man, I think our churches would be a little bit different. I think our churches would come in here being like, man, I get to come to church on Sunday morning. You don't have to drag yourself out. I get to come to a prayer meeting on a Thursday night, or I get to go out and do something for somebody. We ought to have a joy. Jesus made sure he had a joy in his life and everything that he did. But I digress. I chased that rabbit down that hole a little bit, but I just want to know, get back to the story of them running out of the wine. You know, Mary was the first one to know. And she told Jesus of the predicament, knowing that he could do something about it. Mary did not know what Jesus was going to do, but she trusted that he could handle the problem. And he went to Jesus and says, we're out of wine. And he gives an answer I know that all men wish they could give. Woman, what does it have to do with me? You know, you turn around and you just look at your wife and you say, woman, you do whatever and fill in the blank, you're not doing well, okay? It's not going to end well. You know good and well. If I look at my wife and I say, woman, what are you doing? First of all, she knows I'm joking. I hope she knows I'm joking, because I mean I get these death stares and I know, and I laugh. I think it's funny. Jesus made it clear though he was following his own timetable. Well, what he was saying is that he lived and carried out his Father's business according to his plan, and that his priorities were different than her priorities. His priorities aren't the same as his mom's priority. Okay, what? But my priorities, my time hasn't been revealed yet. My glory is coming, and my timetable is different. Mary did pretty much what every other woman would do if you call her a woman. She ignored him. Right? She didn't even give him an answer. She looked at the servants and just says, do whatever he tells you to do. You know, being the mom, you know, Mary just kind of like, whatever. You know, I can see, you'll just do what he tells you to do. Be obedient to him. And then I'll tell you what, I think we can follow Mary's command to the servants. I think that first of all, that we need to trust that Jesus, Mary didn't know what Jesus was going to do, but she just said, I need you to do something. She trusted that Jesus was going to do it, because there's a lot of times in our life when we have things going on and we try trusting ourselves and getting it done. Mary didn't turn to somebody else and go buy more wine. She turned to Jesus. And that's what we need to do with our problems. Let me tell you what, we just need to turn to Jesus with our problems. We need to give Jesus our problems. There's no give Jesus our problems and take it back away. Give him our problems. Because when we're obedient, when we start listening to Jesus and we start being obedient to His call in our life, things are different in our life. We're not the same person when we have that obedience that He calls us to do. Just go do it. Don't worry about the outcome. Just go do what Jesus tells you to do in your life. We just need to be obedient to His direction. So, after chasing those few rabbits, let's get back. Verses 6 through 11 to finish the story. It says, now there were 6 stone water pots set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons each. And Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water. So they filled them up to the brim. And He said to them, draw some out now and take it to the head waiter. So they took it to him. And when the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom and said to him, every man serves the good wine first, and when the people have drunk freely, then he serves the poorer wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. The beginning of His signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested His glory, and His disciples believed in Him. So we see that there's 6 water pots sitting there. These are significant. It just not so happened to be 6 water pots. These water pots were usually used in the Jewish custom of washing their hands as part of the purification rite before and after meals. You know, according to the Jews' ceremonial laws, there's only like 600 or something of them that they had to try to keep. But one of the things that they would keep was just them by touching things, they would become unclean, and they would have to wash their hands ceremonially. And it just so happens that the water in these pots would make you clean, right? But these pots are empty. So these pots, and that's significant, okay? Because He didn't just randomly choose these. These were empty water jars, and they symbolize the emptiness of the Jewish ritual of cleansing yourself on the outside. What He had come to do was give content to an empty religion. And these jars really help visualize what Jesus was talking about. Because in Matthew 5:17, He says, do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill. So Jesus came, and using those as symbolism, which Jesus used a lot, that they were empty. And the Jewish custom, the Jewish religion, was an empty religion. It was about keeping laws and keeping rules, and Jesus says that's not what I came for. It's not about that. It's about me giving you a way back to my Father. And He had them fill the jars up to the brim. And I would think that if you ever poured a cup of water and you poured it so high you can see it kind of being a little bit above the top of the glass where it won't come out. I mean, like all the way to the tip top. There was no water running out, but you can't put another drop in it or it's going to run over the sides. I think that's when He says to the brim, that's where they were filled to. Okay? That far. And there's a reason for that, because there was nothing that could be added to those pots, to that water. He couldn't add any wine to it to make it look like wine. He couldn't add, He couldn't do anything. There was nothing physically that could be added to that without running it over. And He just tells the servants, He says, dip some out and go take it to the head waiter. He took it to the head waiter. And he took a taste of it. He didn't know where it came from. The servants, Jesus, and Jesus' disciples knew. And the head waiter tasted the wine. See, this wasn't water turned into wine because of things added, but it was turned into wine because of what Jesus did. And Jesus doesn't do anything half-heartedly. It was the best wine by this head waiter ever tasted. And he went and he stopped. Can you imagine that he just stopped the whole wedding party going on? What was an embarrassment is now a praise. What was turning into a joyless party is now full of joy. The head waiter tasted that wine and he said, "This is the best wine." Most of the time, all the time, it's the other way around. They have the best wine first, and then after the party starts really going, they bring in the other wine because, their taste buds and everything You know, after they've been drinking freely, they bring in the stuff that's not as good because it doesn't matter. But not this time. Jesus doesn't do anything half-hearted. When he works in your life, when he works for problems, he's just not going to halfway fix a problem. He's going to fix it the whole way. The gospel records, like I said, 35 miracles performed by Jesus. And I want you to know that every miracle that is in the Gospel of John is a sign intended to point people to the truth that Jesus is the divine Son of God, that he came down from heaven. That each miracle is about some person, Jesus doing something for that person. It is a earthly need met. Because Jesus is in that business of meeting needs. Jesus is in the business of helping other people. You see that the disciples, they believed in him, they trusted in him. And I think this is the start of their learning and what it was. The sign of turning water into wine is an unveiling of Jesus' identity, his power over nature, death, sin, and the evil revealed. Pointed everything to the Messiah. And so I've got 3 points here that I want to talk about. I put down miracles happen when we understand that Jesus cares for our everyday needs. We have to understand that Jesus cares for our everyday needs. How many of you here are old enough to remember when it would get dark, that people would come out of, would start getting, in the evening, people would come out of the house and sit on the front porch, and the kids would play out in the, I grew up in a court, a circle, and they would always come out and sit on that porch, and, you know, they knew their neighbors in depthly. You know, it wasn't just like, hey, there's my neighbor, and they wait and they go into the house. I mean, they came out, and sometimes all the neighbors would be on my front porch, or all the neighbors would be on my neighbor, other neighbor's front porch, or they were always there. I mean, how many are old enough to remember that? I know I can. Every you know, all the time, man. It's not that way now, is it? All these kids, millennials, and even some adults now. All your friends are on Facebook. You know, oh, I can communicate and I can do this, but there's no face-to-face. There's no knowing people, because let me tell you what. The thing about the neighbors being like that. If my mom and dad had a problem, they would call one of their neighbors, they'd be right on. There was a care, you know? I mean, really. And I've got friends like that I know I can call up. Many of them are in here. That if I have a problem, they know the same about me, that I would be there instantly. But sometimes, guys, we face problems, we face challenges, whether it's health or financial or relationship or any other challenge that's out there. We think that we're all alone. We're thinking that we're the only ones who care about me and my problems. I can admit that I'm there, that I've done that. You know, that's one of the things about the funeral I did this week, and just knowing that Jesus is there. He is the one that will always be there. He always cares. You know, in the Bible, there's a couple of times that Jesus fed a group of people. In Matthew chapter 15, he's feeding 4,000 people. Not feeding the 5,000, but feeding, there was 4,000 men. And Jesus for 3 days was healing and teaching. And at the end of the 3 days, he has compassion on the people, and he's like, we need to give them food. And the disciples protest. And 15:32 says, Jesus called the disciples to him and said, I feel compassion for the people because they have remained with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, for they might faint on the way. So this isn't the 5,000, it's the 4,000. And, you know, and Jesus fed them, every one of them. And it says the disciples picked up 7 baskets of food when they got done. This was not, like I said, a spiritual matter. It was an earthly matter. It was a physical matter. And Jesus met their need because he cared about it. You know, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, he says, cast your anxiety on me because I care. Cast your anxiety on me because I care. Now, I'll tell you what, you want to see miracles work? You want to see things in your life? You want to see the little problems get solved? Because Jesus solves the little problems as well as the big problems. We just think that him and God just work on the big problems, don't worry about the little problems. They care about our everyday needs. They care about what we're going through every single day. Yes, God who created the universe, who sustains this world, cares about your everyday need. And let me tell you what, that's reassuring to me. That's reassuring knowing that no matter what I'm going through, no matter how big or how small, that he's going to be there. He doesn't draw a line and say, well, I'm not going to worry about these. No, he's there for those two. Man, he knows each and every single one of us. He knows our hearts. I mean, he cares for the sparrows who land on the ground. He cares for each and every single one of us. He's a great God, and there's nothing too small for him. You want to see miracles work in your life? Start understanding that Jesus cares for all your everyday needs. Because when you start looking for those type of things, you're going to see blessings, you're going to see miracles working. Next thing I want us to see is that miracles happen when we understand that Jesus transforms our everyday experiences. Transforms our everyday experiences. Jesus didn't come just to give us information. He didn't come just to tell us a few things. Jesus came to transform us. He came to transform us. He changes things. He takes the ordinary and makes it extraordinary. That's what Jesus does. He did not come to bring new ideals. He came to make new people. That's why he came. The water did just not appear to be wine. It was transformed into wine. Turning water into wine is something that God does every single day in our life. Because our Savior's in the transformation business. You know, the world wants us to get a new hairdo. It wants us to get a new wardrobe, to dress better. Society says you have to have a better job, you learn a new skill. You know, you get commercials all the time saying you need to lose weight or get a facelift. But let me tell you what, Jesus doesn't want to change the way you look. He wants to change your heart. He doesn't want to give you a new suit. He wants to make you a new person. He does not want to rearrange you. He wants to transform you. The world says you need to look better on the outside. Jesus says you need to be a better person on the inside. And I want to transform your inside. And when I transform your inside, then your outside's going to be different. That's what Jesus does. That's what he's in the business of doing. You know, the Bible says his glory was revealed, and the disciples put their faith in him. There's no limit to his grace. There's just never, you think there's just enough, you know. In Romans 5:20 it says when sin abounds, grace abounds even more. It's not just enough, it's more than enough. Always enough, always more. You know, that's the way it is. You know, I read a story about I know I've told it before, about a building that was condemned. And homeless people would go in there, kids would go in there, and they pretty much had destroyed the inside of the building. They had broke glass windows, took the doors off of hinges, spray painted, tagged everything and all that. And so the owner decided was trying to sell it. Finally he had somebody to come and look at it. And as they're walking through, the owner is going, well, I'll fix this, I'll repaint, get rid of the graffiti, and I'll fix the doors, I'll fix the windows and all that. And that owner says, don't worry about that. I'm tearing this down and building a new one. That's what Jesus does every single day. He tears us down and builds us anew. You know, on 2 Corinthians 5:17. It says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things have passed away. Behold, new things have come. Because Jesus is in the transformation business. He transforms our everyday life. He is extravagant. You know, he takes the ordinary, makes it extravagant. That's what each one of us are. We're ordinary. He transforms us into his child, into extraordinary creatures. He fills our life with beauty and wonder. He's in the business of turning water into wine, sinners into saints, fear into courage, sorrow into joy, defeat into victory, despair into hope, and death into life. He's in the transformation business, ladies and gentlemen. And you believe me, that's the greatest miracle he's ever did in his life, by transforming sinners into saints. Last thing I want us to see, miracles happens when we understand that Jesus provides for our everyday request. Provides for our everyday request. In Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 and 8, it is a prayer guide. It says, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be open. Jesus provides for request. You know, the first thing we need to do is ask. You know? And a lot of times we get to the point where we try to fix things ourselves. We get out there and we have a problem. We say, well, I can fix this problem. And then it gets worse. And then we try to fix it again and it still gets worse. And then finally, when we have no place to turn, what do? We go to God. We say, hey, I got this problem. And then what do? We try to take it back. Right? We say, here it is. And then we'll say, well, never mind, I think I got it now. You know? But it says that we need to ask. Actually, because we don't have that problem with asking, but in verse 7 and 8, it talks about repetition. Ask, seek, and knock. Verse 8 says, ask, seek, and knock. We need to ask. We need to seek Jesus out. We need to pound on that door. Let me tell you what, you know, Jesus is telling us that don't forget to pray, that we need to be praying continually. You know, Jesus is not some food vending machine where we can just put some money in and punch a button and get our prayer answered. He wants us to continually be praying. You know? We're going to be talking about this Wednesday night in 1 Thessalonians 5:17 when it says, pray without ceasing. It doesn't mean to be on your knees here praying all the time. It means to be in the spirit of prayer. We need to have a prayer time specific, you know, a time when we come and we hit our knees and we ask for requests and we turn these things over to Him. They want to hear our requests, but we need to be in a way of praying without ceasing. Praying should be a regular part of our life. Bill Hybel tells of a story after a baptismal service that he ran into a lady in the stairwell and she was crying. He's like, everything okay? We just had a very joyous service and you're crying. She says, I'm struggling, she says. She said, my mom was baptized today and I prayed for almost 20 years. She said, the reason I'm crying is because I came this close to quit. I prayed for 20 years. And after 5 years, I was like, is God even listening? After 10 years, I said, I'm wasting my time. At the 15-year mark, I said, this is absurd. At the 19-year mark, I said, I'm a fool. She said, even though when I was weak, my faith was weak, I kept praying. And the day my mom was baptized, she says, the power of prayer is great. Guys, we can't ever stop praying, no matter what. We got to keep praying. If there's a person in your life, if something's not going your way, we can never stop praying. Because look, in verses 7 and 8, in this, not only were we told to ask, seek, and knock, but listen, In verse 7 it says, it will be given to you. You will find, the door will be open to you. And in verse 8 it says, receives, finds, and it will be open. And Jesus is saying, if you ask and seek and knock, I'm going to hear it. And you're going to receive it. And that door will be open to you. Now, I'm not saying God will answer all the prayers the way you want them to be answered. If you're praying for $1 million, you know that to pray and receive that you're going to get that $1 million. You know what? Keep praying for it. He might give you that $1 million. But that's not what this is about. They're going to answer. God's going to answer in His own way, in His own time. But I'm thinking of Jesus saying, if you're praying for my will, you're praying for what I need done, then you can ask and seek and knock, and I will answer you. Because I will do what I have to do. He might not get you out of that situation, but He'll get you through that situation. I can guarantee you that. We need to seek His will in our prayers and pray for things that will glorify Him. Because God cares about us and our requests, and will answer them as He sees fit. As He sees fit to answer them. So to wrap up, you know what? We need to understand that Jesus is all we need in our life. We don't need anything else but Jesus. Mary turned to Jesus and says, you take care of this. That's what we need in our life. That's all we need in our life. We need to understand that He's going to take care of it. Our everyday, mundane requests, He's going to be there. Because we have been transformed by His blood and by His Spirit. And when we come to Him with our requests, He will answer them. He died. He rose again. And because He did that, He has victory over death, victory over sin, and He has victory. And let me tell you what, He will bring you out of your despair into His victory. That's the Jesus that we serve. That's our Lord and Savior. The question is, are you allowing Him to work in your life? Please stand as I close.